Thank you for listening to Open Heart with Lisa, where his heart matters. I'm so glad you've tuned in, and I just want to go over a couple of little things before we get started because I want you to know what Open Heart with Lisa is and what Open Heart with Lisa is not. Open Heart with Lisa is not a therapy session with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a marriage counselor. I'm not either of those. But what I've decided to do was to give gentlemen a platform to discuss matters of their heart, a platform so they can speak openly and honestly about things that have happened to them during the course of their relationship. This gives them a way to vent in a very honest, candid way. Now, I don't want anyone, ladies, to get upset about what my gentleman guest will say. Because, first of all, he's not talking about you. He's not talking about me. He's speaking from his life's perspective, and he has a right to share his heart. And you won't hear him share it in a malice way and a vindictive way. He's just sharing his love experience. So I'm glad this week that we're doing conversation number 1 today with a gentleman by the name of, let's call him Jerome from Washington. And what we're talking about this week is a title called Married, Laid, and Lonely. Let me just repeat that in case you didn't get it. Married, laid, and lonely. But before we get into all of that stuff, I want Jerome, who is married, and he loves his wife, but I want him to speak and just go through the backstory so we'll know how he met his wife. So, Jerome, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful. So let's get with the nitty-gritty. Here is the question, Jerome. Where did you meet your wife?
Well, actually, I met my wife through a mutual friend when I first met her. It was one of those instances where we happened to be out at a social gathering. And I got to know her, as I said, through a mutual friend. And over a period of time, she actually came to be employed at the same location I was employed at, which was an interesting dichotomy. And initially, we didn't necessarily start off in a relationship that was one, which was a romantic one, but we were very, very much friendly. And we tend to spend a lot of time together because we worked in the same environment. And over time, I just made a decision in my mind that this could be more than just a simple friendship. It can be something that could be to grow to be into something long-lasting and possibly even life-changing. And we had an opportunity over at another social gathering to get together. And the interesting thing is at that social gathering, her and I, as I said, were just friends. And she had another girlfriend of hers ask her, "Is there anything going on between you and Jerome?" And the shock of that to her when she responded, no, Jerome's just a friend of mine. And she said, later on she thought about it and she said, wait a minute, this is a really good person that I know and has a lot of positive attributes, and there are things that she believes that gave her pause to say that maybe there could be more to our relationship than had existed at that point. And that's kind of when we first realized that maybe there might be a future together as opposed to separate. And we started dating from there.
Okay, so how long did you date before you got married?
Well, we dated for quite a few years. I would say it was probably about 2 to 3 years that we had a growing relationship, growing passion for each other. And at some point in that relationship, something else occurred, a pregnancy.
Okay.
And that made kind of the exclamation point on our developing relationship to say that this is something that we were going to move into the next phase. And, of course, prior to a child being brought into the world, we worked out to find a new place of accommodation that was going to be comfortable for both of us. And we moved in together, and my first child was born. And not too much longer after that, we decided we would get married. And so, in fact, that's what we did.
Okay, what was it about your wife that made you want to date her? Because before you met your wife, were you seeing somebody else? Had you broken up with someone for a while? Or, were you single?
Well, before I met her, it was more a situation where I was dating, but not in any serious relationship, and I wasn't really comfortable with necessarily developing a real strong bond or connection to another lady, because I had gone through a very traumatic relationship with a woman prior to that, which is probably a whole other story, but it involved some infidelity, and it involved actually a mutual friend of ours, someone who I had known for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, which was a very uncomfortable situation for me. So I really wasn't looking for a relationship at the time. But I guess it was a combination of getting to know her and her personality, getting to understand her family situation, the fact that, I thought she was physically beautiful. She was very statuesque. She was very well spoken. I loved her voice. It was one of those things where you see someone and you almost perceive them as regal in terms of the way that she carried herself. She was highly intelligent. And, those kinds of attributes said to me that this is somebody special. And that's kind of how it moved in the direction of being something more than just a friendship.
Okay, so did you like her family, and did she like yours? Let me ask you this question. The first person in your family she met was whom? Your mother, your siblings, your father?
The first person she met in my family was my mother, and it was very clear that she was very cordial. She was very effusive about having the opportunity to meet my mother, because I guess that's not something that's happened necessarily to her in the past, where a man brought home a woman to his mom to meet. And as I said, we weren't really in a relationship when she first met my mother, but we were well on our way to one. And my mother really liked her. My mother thought that she was a good person. My mother felt that she was someone at some point that could provide a lot of support for me in terms of my focus on growth in terms of career, emotional, and intellectual capacity. And so they developed a very, very strong relationship, and a very good one. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I think because of the type of people we are, we appreciate family, and we both do. And my family has become almost like her family in a sense, not necessarily from birth, but from the time that we actually became engaged with one another. And her family has become the same for me. We're an extension of each other in that respect.
Okay, do you consider at that particular time when you were dating your wife, did you consider her your friend?
Absolutely. She was my best friend. I mean, we kind of developed along the lines of friendship, as I said, and it was one where we could have the most intimate conversations and be non-judgmental and be able to not necessarily dictate, but give advice on how you might deal with a specific type of situation, and also appreciate that advice, whether it was something that was taken and run with or not. And we shared a lot of intimate moments in that respect. It was refreshing to know that you could trust someone with your innermost thoughts and not feel that you're going to be betrayed by them because you expressed it, or to be able to actually look to somebody who you knew had some modicum of intelligence, who can give you some intelligent feedback on what it is you were feeling or what it is you were thinking. So it was a symbiotic kind of thing.
Okay, so you considered your wife your friend at that particular time too. Were you the kind of couple that did a lot together? I've known people who date, in relationship. They don't spend that much time together, and although they may love each other, they're not friends. They have other people who are in the friendship area, closer to them. So I guess the question I'm really asking you is, did you find that you did a lot together?
Well, I can put it this way. We lived in different states, adjacent states, but different states, and you'd be amazed at the amount of time we spent together, either I at her house or her at my house, and how we interspersed our friends, her friends with mine, mine with hers, and in terms of the guys that I hung out with, it was like she was accepted as one of the boys. She could hang out at the park with us as we were playing basketball, or go to the movies with us and just be part of the group and be accepted as part of the group, and not really anyone perceiving that we can't talk in front of her because of what she might think of us, because it wasn't that kind of deal. It was one of mutual respect and courtesy and concern and consideration. And in the reverse attribute, I think it was to a great degree the same with most of her friends, where they knew that I was special to her, and so I was kind of accepted into the group, being able to mix with either group as if they were one.
Okay, so then you get to the point, we're going to move it forward, that you decide that you're going to marry your wife. And did she know that you had you ever had a discussion about getting married, or did you surprise her with a ring?
We talked about it in on a number of occasions about the possibilities and the fact that it was something that we when we both felt we wanted to do so, we would express it. And so it was a surprise for her on the day that I proposed to her, because it was at another social gathering, actually at our house. And her parents were there, my parents were there, our siblings were there, and I had decided that was the day that I wanted to do it. I had gone out with another friend of mine to pick out a nice, beautiful stone, and we went and picked up the ring, and I gave it to her. That's how the proposal went. It was during, as I said, during a social gathering where all of our family and closest friends were there. But nobody really knew except one. That was the guy that went with me to pick up the ring that I was going to propose.
Okay, cool. And here's so then you propose, you get married. Did you have a big wedding? You have a small wedding? You have a medium wedding?
We actually had what I would consider a relatively small wedding, because we actually had our wedding overseas. We had it in the Caribbean. And but when I say small, I mean it was definitely a destination wedding. And when I say small, I mean it was like 70 or 80 people. Mm-hmm. Both our friends from our college days, our siblings and parents, and also quite a number of people who worked with us, who we were friends with, mutual friends with, that came down to celebrate our union together. And of course our son, who was the ring bearer.
Oh, cute. How old was your son at that particular time?
At that time, he was 2.5 years old.
Oh, that's cute. Okay, so now you're married. You come back, and so now you're newlyweds. So I'm assuming everything is peachy cream. That tends to be a nice season when you first get married. Well, I found it to be nice, even though it was short-lived. But when you came back home, you all on cloud nine, I'm assuming.
Right. It was a good time. It was a healthy time for us, and I guess it was a period of time of transition for us. We were transitioning from what had been a mutually agreed upon relationship to one that was imbued by God and by civil authorities, that we were in lockstep together. And I think that for a period of time it was really good. There were challenges, of course, both because we were dealing with a new environment and child raising, and I think there were pressures at the job for both of us, because we still both worked.
Wait, what do you mean there were challenges because you were dealing with a new environment? What did you move out? What do you mean by that?
Well, when I say a new environment, it's now a different focus. Now we're no longer in a so-called committed relationship, but now we're married, and so now there is a turning point. I mean, you do have a recognition now that there's a lot more permanence to this, and in our society today, people have kids all the time and then they go their separate ways. That was never necessarily a consideration of ours, but now the reality was that wasn't going to be something that we were just going to do flippantly. It would have to be something that would be involve a legal process. It would also be something that would have some basis in our religious upbringing and teachings, and so it was a more rigid, structured kind of commitment. And so that is a transition, but not a bad transition. I think we made the transition pretty easily and pretty well. But at the same time, there were, I think, signs that there were going to be some challenges ahead in terms of how we were going to continue to build our relationship. And I'll take a step back. Even prior to, or immediately after our wedding, we had a little disagreement because there had been previous discussions about how we were going to deal with our last names, and we had a difference of opinion on what we had agreed to. So that was a challenge, but we got through that.
Well, let's go back because I'm interested in what that meant, how you would deal with your last name. What does that mean? Does she want to keep hers and not use yours, or does she want to hyphenate?
She wanted to keep hers. And, from my perspective, what I had mentioned to her is that's all well and good if that's something you decide to do, but we need to make a decision about what that's going to be today. And this is prior to the wedding. And to me, my discussion with her, ultimately, it led to, well, I'm going to take your last name, which was, I was fine with that. And you have to understand, she was previously married. So It was one of those situations where, when in my mind, I'm saying, if you want to be committed to me, it's the whole thing, cleave unto one another. And we have to make a decision about whether that's going to be the case or not, because obviously that didn't happen in the past relationship. And not saying who's at fault. I wasn't a part of that. I can't make no judgment of that particular situation, but I do understand where I want our relationship to go, and there's a significance in it to me.
There's a significance in what, a woman taking your last name?
Absolutely, and that's
what
my
do you
own
feel?
position.
Let me just ask you this, just sidebar. What do you, as I've known men who are married and their wives have not taken their last name. Me, when I got married many years ago, I've been divorced, but I hyphenated my name, and one of the reasons I had my husband's last name, but I hyphenated because I would do things for entertainment, and a lot of times there would be times when people would introduce me as Lisa, my husband's name, and they wouldn't know who that person was, but when they put Lisa, my maiden name, hyphen my husband's last name, then, everybody, kind of knew who I was, but that was like
let me tell you what the compromise was. The compromise ultimately was that she would keep her last name, and that would be part of her name, and I had no issue with that. And I understood her perception that that's part of her legacy, and she wanted that to be a part of her future, and I didn't have a problem with that. That wasn't the issue for me. The issue was my last name, and whether that was going to be something consistent with hers, and whether we were going to be bonded, not whether she could keep her last name, and actually that's the way it is today, where people call her both. I even call her by her last name sometimes. So
so you don't. So I just want to understand: is she hyphenated, or she doesn't use your last name at all?
No, she uses both.
She uses
and
both.
She did not hyphenate it, but she uses both. It's her last name then my last name, without a hyphen.
Okay. All right. So just as a man, I just want to know, if a woman, just your opinion, just how you feel, how do you feel, how did that make you feel if a woman doesn't want to take on your last name? Do you feel that the woman then it's like she's not fully committing to you? I just want to know how you feel.
That's exactly what I feel. What I feel is that she's still, in many ways, wrapped up with who she was rather than who we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
My focus is on us together as a couple in the future and what we're going to do together, not necessarily so much on where we've been in the past, but it's about us joining together to move forward mutually. And the reversal is true as well. And as I said, I had no problem with her holding on to her maiden name. That wasn't the issue. Mm-hmm. The issue was, are we going to be bonded? Are we going to be bonded in physicality? Are we going to be bonded in name? Are we going to be bonded?
Okay.
And it's important. It was important to me.
Okay, no, I understand. I just want to understand because I know people. I mean, I personally believe that's just my belief. If I'm married to my husband, I didn't mind being called Mrs. Lisa and the person I was married to because he was my husband. But people are different, and I would never want to get married to a man. It's just my viewpoint, and not use his last name. Because to me that's significant. How are people going to know that I'm even married? I'm not trying
that's my point.
Right.
That's my
I'm
point.
not trying
are we a unit or are we not a unit?
Yeah, I'm not trying to go down and file for marriage papers. And then after that's done, people don't know what I am. Well, are you married? Are you not married? I think it's just. That's just me. And a lot of people do things different ways. But I just wanted to know how you felt about that because.
And there are some reasons why a person may want to maintain their current moniker, and if it were business reason, I have a company that the company has my name on it, those kinds of things, and I have no problem in you using that as a representative of who you are in business, but in terms of who you are from a family perspective, I think it's important that connection be made, and I guess that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think, too, and I'm just thinking as you're talking, because if you have I'm just saying this, but if you're married to someone, you have children, and the children take on the last name of the father, but the mother has her maiden name, it doesn't even appear to be a family unit.
Mm-hmm. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people, everybody has their way, but I was just curious. So when you got past that, and she, she kept her name and your name.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and obviously y'all had decided that you had ironed that out, I guess, right before the wedding, or right before you did the marriage.
No, we ironed that out right after the wedding.
Oh. Oh, right after the wedding. All right. So before that marriage license was signed. Oh, okay. Okay, you made that stuff clear. Uh-huh. All right. So you get past that. You said something, and no. Let me ask you a question. You get past that. You're living your lives. Do you remember the first? And just tell me if you want to talk about it, though. Do you remember the first issue that you had that was in the marriage that made you say, you know what, this might be a problem later on?
It's hard to remember any particular issue in the sense that many times those kinds of things aren't even really relevant or important, but they seem to sometimes carry weight way beyond their level of importance.
Of course.
But I do remember, an instance where we had an argument. I don't even remember what the argument was about because it was so many years ago. And she became physical with me. And that's a challenge for me because I don't want to be in a position where I'm dealing with a woman that's going to be physical because that creates all kinds of problems. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't stay.
When you say physical, you mean someone hitting you?
Being someone striking me, someone pushing me, those kinds of things.
Okay.
I'm not going down that dark alley.
When you said that, I'm just asking because I have a show that we're going to be doing in the next few weeks about domestic violence from the man actually being beat up. Because I know that can be, for some relationships, although held in a very secretive manner, that there are men who've been smacked, hit, a few things have been done. I've known in situations like that, face all messed up.
That's not the case here because that wasn't something I would tolerate.
No, I know. I'm not talking about from your perspective. I'm just saying there's a show that we're going to be doing with a particular person, and that is something that probably the first time the person put her hands on him, he probably should have tried to figure a way to let her understand that this is not going to continue, because it had escalated. But so you have that, you all have that heated argument, and let me just say this, and let me ask you, so people have an understanding. You love your wife.
Oh, absolutely, love her very much.
Yeah, okay, say that one more time. I like to hear that very much on the tip.
I
You
love
love
my
your
wife very
wife.
much. Very much. I'm just very frustrated with the situation as it exists today, and I'm not sure where it's going to end.
Okay, because I just want people to understand, and like I said, when the men who come on my show love their wives, or they have loved, life happens in all relationships. I was married once, divorced, and I don't know anybody who ever got married saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get married, get down this aisle, so in 2 years I can get a divorce." Things happen, and sometimes some of us are not. Sometimes some of us are just meant to be friends, and sometimes, unfortunately, some of us run our course. We can't get back together. But I want people to have a clear understanding. You love your wife.
Well, I would love my wife even if I weren't with her. Yeah, so it's that kind of thing where it's not that people don't have redeeming qualities that make them special. It's that sometimes there are issues that come up between two people that are irreconcilable because of polarly opposing positions, and sometimes that's just the way it is.
So now here you are married, and you. Let me just ask you a question. You've been married for what, over 15 years?
Over 15 years, definitely.
Okay, over 15 years. And in those 15 years, when I say how many years did you have marital bliss? And I say marital bliss, not everything is perfect, but it's just when you look back, those were like the best years that we've had. Whereas like 3 years of just.
I would say that the years when I was really happiest was probably the first few years. I mean, I couldn't say it was 2 or 3, but it was the first few years. But as
how many years do you think your wife would say she was really her happiest?
That I wouldn't even guess at. I mean, I wouldn't know her mind.
Okay.
So that's not something I would really guess at.
Okay. So here you are. You are now. Let's talk about you, the husband. Are you the type of husband when you got married, you made a commitment to yourself that you would do the best you can do for your family? You would provide the best. Let's talk about the kind of father and husband you've been before we close this segment out.
Okay. Well, I can say if you're talking about being a provider, I've worked very hard in my professional life to be able to move forward and advance to the degree that I could possibly do, both from a professional perspective and that I really feel that any job you do, you have to focus on what that job means. Does it have meaning to people? Does it have meaning to society? And that really is the primary motivator for me when I get up to go to work every day, because that's what drives my ability to do the best job I can. Following that, there's always the financial compensation that comes from doing the best job you can, and that has come, very well, that become a very fruitful pursuit for me, and that I've, progressively moved forward in terms of position and authority in the role that I've served. My most recent position, I'm a senior executive in a corporate environment, and that has given me the ability to provide substantially for my family in terms of their wants and their needs, both for my wife and for my children, in terms of having a nice, comfortable home and having new vehicles sitting in the driveway and being able to take vacations and being able to provide sponsorship for overseas education and being focused on my kids' development and making sure that I participate in going back from the time they were infants and the whole feeding process and waking up at night. And I was the guy out at night with my baby in the carrier walking in the middle of the winter time because he couldn't sleep. And, that was my job, not my wife's, or delivering them to the babysitter in the morning or picking them up in the evening, and being very close with my children, because that was something that I did not get from my father. And I made a commitment that my kids were never going to want for a father in their lives under any circumstances. And so that's been my ultimate goal and pursuit, to make sure that they had a level of comfort that Dad would be there on any occasion that they had that was special to them, and being in support of their goals and their aspirations and their dreams. And I hope that that's something that they perceive that I do, and I continue to try to do all the way through, one son's going through college, the other child getting ready to go to college, and being able to pick and choose the school he wants to go to, not the one that necessarily, from some people's perspectives, are the most affordable, but the one that he feels it's going to be providing him the best education in the area he wants to pursue. And that's been my objective, and the same holds true for my wife in terms of meeting her needs and desires to the greatest degree I can, whatever those things might be.
So, are you the breadwinner of the household?
Well, we both work, but from a financial perspective, my salary has been consistently significantly higher than hers. So, but that's never been an issue with me, because it's not about how much you make, but it's about, from a relativist point of view, what your contribution is, and that contribution can be financial, that contribution can be emotional, that contribution can be physical, it can be a lot of different things. And so I don't quantify what your contribution to the family unit is by necessarily how much money you contribute, but how much you focus on what we need and how we go about getting it, and being able to maintain what we have to maintain within the bounds of both of our economic capacity. And that's been, sometimes challenging, because, sometimes I think that people don't think about us as a whole. They think about me as an individual. And that's a challenge for me, because I always think about us as a whole and where we're going.
What do you mean by that? You think sometimes people, I'm assuming you're speaking of your wife, you don't think that, you're saying you think that she thinks of you as an individual, she doesn't think of you all as a whole. What do you mean by her thinking of you as an individual?
Well, I mean, they want what they want. She wants what she wants. She wants to do what she wants when she wants, and I'm not sure if she always thinks through all of the implications or repercussions, or if it's an issue of, I'm not going to work for the next 3 years because I want to pursue something else that's my dream. Well, that has an impact on the entire family, not just on you. And where does as I said, everything is relative. What is your contribution here? Sometimes we have to step back and say, if what I want is going to impact and negatively have a negative impact on the whole, maybe that's not the direction we ought to go, or maybe we need to find another way for me to achieve that. I don't think that process ever enters in.
Jerome, I hate to cut you off. Listen, you'll be back tomorrow. Don't go anywhere, because we got to end this segment. And when we come back tomorrow, I want to talk about when did things begin to change. So you just hold on, Jerome. I want to thank everyone for listening to Open Heart with Lisa. Thank Jerome from Washington for sharing his heart. I heard through the grapevine that Jerome holds it down at home. That's what I heard, that Jerome makes it happen for his family, which I know is excellent. Anyway, thank everybody for listening to us. I want you to know that you can go to my blog, www.openheartwithlisa.com, go to Facebook, or you can go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel. Once again, thank you for listening to Open Heart with Lisa, where his heart matters. God bless you.